Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
And
good night.
welcome
to behind the scenes
of our
best
days. My name is John.
My name is Arvin.
And right now, we just found out that our microphones
You
work
don't have
really
to be that
good.
loud if you have a mic this
So
large.
if
The larger your microphone,
The
the
whole
quieter you have to
podcast,
be.
we're going to talk very quiet
Like we're
and calm.
nighttime DJs.
Like we're nighttime.
Did you ever listen to Sunday Night Slow Jams?
Sunday Night Slow Jams
on
the
BET?
radio? No, I'm sorry, not
There were
BET.
several different radio stations and shows that had
and they were
yeah.
like, welcome to...
Yeah. They spoke very much, a lot better than I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would be driving home at night and I'd be like, why do I
the
need to
R&B
repent?
playlist.
Because I feel so, I don't know if the appropriate word is like turned on.
It was music
I would feel
like
turned
that,
on.
and then it was like the one I would listen to was like, and against my parents' best wishes, I would listen to the one where they'd like shout out their love. They're like, I want to shout out my friend this or my girlfriend or my whatever. I miss you, baby.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
They call like, did you listen to the radio tonight? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, so whenever I was, hey guys, we're gonna get to the podcast
Totally.
in just a
Give us
second.
a second. Go ahead.
But
You stay
all
right
of
there.
you guys have probably, if you're older like us, you're aware of this thing called the radio.
Right.
So
Before Sirius XM, it was like an actual dial.
It's an actual radio. Like, I still listen to the classical radio station. That's not to like be a highbrow, passive aggressive comment like people who don't are not smart. That's
Right.
not.
No,
because
of
I'm
course.
not.
But you are
I just-
impressed.
Yes,
as
but
I am.
you guys should admit that you're impressed that I do listen to classical. Just kidding. Okay, so but on another thing, whenever I was in college in my dorm room, I really wanted to listen to Delilah. Delilah, love someone tonight. And that was really bad at singing. But Delilah was a nighttime DJ and people would call in crying. And it was
boy.
like, and she would go, I think I have the best song. Like, okay, so people would call Delilah. In fact, Sleepless in Seattle is based off of Delilah.
I didn't know that.
Sleepless in Seattle is based off of this female DJ named Delilah. And she would come on easy listening at night. And she literally was a radio psychologist.
Wow. Yeah.
To where people would go,
Yeah.
I just broke up with this so-and-so, but I really feel like it has just been a whirlwind of emotions. And then she goes, yeah. What was her name? Do you want to say anything to her tonight?
Wow.
Literally on the radio. And this guy would be like, yeah, Heather, Heather, I just want to let you know that what we had was real. And then saying other things, right?
Yeah.
And she'd go, I think I have the right song for you. Right. And then she'd play Boys to Men, End of the Road. Although we've come to the end of the road, still I can. And she would go, all right, well, let's give it up for Jake as he cries himself to sleep tonight. Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
Yeah, but she's awesome. And then she went, but I would listen to her at night in my dorm room. Like to study.
Yeah.
It was just an odd season of my life, but I was like, it's a weird thing to where like if I ever met Delilah, and because of her voice, you always imagined her to look a certain way.
Oh, sure.
And people were like, have you seen what she actually looks like? And I was like, I choose not to.
Right.
I don't want to know.
No, right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like whenever you hear a song that you go, ooh, I really like this song.
Yes.
And then you make up a music video in your head of what this, and then all of a sudden you are watching something and the music video of that song comes on and you go, that was a dumb music video.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it ruins the song for you because you're like, the music video that I made in my head was much more cooler.
100%.
Yeah. Anyways, so this is Behind the Scenes of Our Best Days, Season 3.
That's right.
And today, we're really grateful for this because, as you guys know, if this is your very first time listening to us, we want to say thank you, especially if you've held on this long for that first 10 minutes.
Wow.
We apologize.
For sure.
But we work in the creative department here at Victory Church, victory.com in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So whether you're listening to it in the year 2053 or 2022, that's what we do. We have done scripts of productions and films and conferences and all these things. And so within the ministry world, there is a best days. There is a thing that everyone's like, we're going to hang our hat on. Like, this is our thing that we want to put on Instagram, that we want to put, on our YouTube. Like, this is what we showcase.
Right.
And so this podcast is about behind the scenes of what people showcase.
Exactly.
So for us, it's ministry. But for you, whether you are a working parent or you're a business person or whatever, you probably have a behind the scenes of what you showcase people.
Yeah.
So we kind of talk about the nuances of that. And anyways, so we were talking about timing and timing of things. So we'll talk about timing of dreams, timing of when to share certain things, timing of all of these things, because I think that, there is a timing for everything. The scripture.
100%. There's Ecclesiastes. Yeah.
In Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything. And even the tough things, like a time, it does say a time to kill.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't know if we can do that today.
Kill a bad habit.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Or
I look to them for approval. I go, did you enjoy that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that we had mentioned that I wrote down was the right thing at the wrong time is a bad thing.
Right.
I'm going to say that again. The right thing at the wrong time is a bad thing.
That's right.
Do not confuse your 3-year plan with your 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Don't confuse your 3-year plan because those two things are different.
Right.
Where you're going to be in 3 years is totally different than where you're going to be in 10 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think that things are going so slow.
Yeah.
And then you look back and you go, whoa, so much has happened in 3 years.
Absolutely.
I look back in my life.
Totally.
Maybe those of you who are listening or watching, you look back at what God has done in your life.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in God, you can still look back and go, whoa, the last 3 years.
Yeah. Especially in these specific 2019, 20, and 21. Like, wow.
Yes.
That span.
All of those things. And then you look back 10 years ago. So that is why anything that you are in a rush to get, it is the biggest temptation, I know for me, with my personality and those types of things, and maybe for you, Arvin, and those of you who are listening or watching right now, our biggest temptation is to get upset, or that whole scripture, hope deferred makes the heart sick.
That's right.
Is that your heart is sick because you're surrounded by everyone's best days, or at least the best days that they showcase.
Yeah.
And all you are looking at is your behind the scenes.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, man. But the thing is that the structure that God is building in you to hold the blessing that he has for you, it has to be strong. If you knew what God had in store for you, you would not be upset over the process that he's taking you through.
100%.
Type of a thing.
Absolutely.
And so whatever it takes to understand that. So Arvin, now you go.
Oh, sure. I mean, we talked about the nature of the average person nowadays with the social media climate that we have.
Yipers.
And it seems like the more and more I interact with people between ages, like even down to like 14 and up to like, honestly, 35, 40.
Yeah.
People who are like very fluent on their iPhones or Androids. If you have one.
If you have one, we love you.
Sure. But you're probably not listening to this podcast.
But you're probably not. Yeah. Okay, go for it.
But is when you're so fluent in exporting your life, you pay a lot less attention to what's being imported.
Whoa.
You're constantly interpreting friendships,
hold on, say that again.
When you're so focused on how you're going to export your life, you don't have as much time to pay attention to what's coming into your life. You just let life happen, and then you spin it for a story.
It's actually really good.
And all the your social media. I mean, and I'm not opposed to this.
Yes,
but I just want to observe from like maybe it's a sociological, anthropological observation of like, what is this doing to human people that I sit there every day and I put a story on in my car and I talk about a story that happened to me. And that way I found it myself. Maybe no one else does this and I'm about to get debunked, but I have observed that when I'm thinking about my life in terms of how I'm going to tell the story later, I'll behave differently. I'm less present. I'm more so like, and then it turns into like, and this has been a weird one in the last probably 5 to 10 years. And it's probably going to get worse in the next 5 to 10 years. The things that get a lot of attention in a story are conflict, what you disagree with, what you're standing up against. I'm not opposed to, calling out people who need to step down and resign from things, but I hesitate to say the word cancel culture. It's kind of become a thing of like, I'm observing culture for what I can disagree with, and then I'm gonna like mental real estate. I'm gonna flip it for attention. And
Okay.
Yeah.
So an example would be, I post something,
Sure.
and then you get on the comments.
Yeah. And I would think of an example like you and I go on a trip.
Okay.
We drive somewhere for a weekend, and we're gonna like get ideas for scripts or something.
Yeah.
The whole time you're like, so Arvin, how are you? What's going on? And I am on my phone and I'm filming the road because I'm like, I'm going to use this as a clip of a video I'm going to make, and then this and then that. And so despite the fact that I can probably still have that conversation, what I'm getting out of that time is, I can't wait to post this. And
As opposed to this conversation I'm having with John.
yeah,
on this
and
road
it's
trip.
like I'm here and I'm not looking for a chance to flip what he says or what I say into a product. The reason that's harmful, I think, so far is because what do you do if your life is good? You have to make mountains out of molehills. And if anyone calls you out on that and says that's not a big deal, you go, well, hold on. The word trauma is now everywhere. And
so people are like, and I understand everyone, your emotions are valid. It doesn't mean that they're justified.
And it doesn't mean it's time to produce a show about them on your Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're just like, I can't believe I was like abused and attacked.
Right.
And it was like Starbucks gave you the wrong drink.
Right. Yeah.
But you're like, but this.
Right. It's a huge deal.
And it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And the only reason why it is a big deal is because you're like, because I need to post about it.
Sure.
Just because
Yeah.
the attention that I'm getting as
Right.
it's like at Chuck E. Cheese. When you put in the tokens, I want it to light up.
Totally. Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm
it's
gonna
like-
put in my trauma, and then I'm gonna get likes and attention, and that. The only problem with that is like, that is a cycle that rewards you for having issues. So
whoa,
why do you want them? Why would you want them fixed? This is your moneymaker. It's your cash cow. Your trauma becomes your cash cow. I just know a lot of people now who are like 17, 20, 24, who are like, not necessarily wanting their problems fixed, and they're not even aware of it. It's subconscious, like the angle at which everything is spoken and communicated from them. The reason I say all this is because we've become a generation of people who overshare because we're convinced that's the way to get out of this problem, what I needed to get out of it, as opposed to like, I've experienced this was difficult, and God has healed that process. Now I can talk about it, because I have gone that approach. I don't talk about things while I'm still bleeding from them.
Okay. So that was another thing. We talked about timing of what God is doing in your life, of knowing that your 3-year plan is different than your 10-year plan.
Yeah.
But now we're moving to the timing of when to share things.
Right.
And something that Arvin actually said last week to me that I actually wrote up on the board is that, as I said, he said this is what Arvin said, and I'm going to say it because I want to.
No, of course.
Arvin said, when you're done bleeding is the only time you can talk about a scar.
Yeah.
When you're done bleeding is the only time you can talk about a scar.
Yeah, safely.
What that means is, and I know you're like, what does that even mean? It means that if you are bleeding over a breakup or something that really offended you at a church or a business, or sometimes it comes down to relationships.
Sure.
Most of the times it comes down to a friend, a spouse, a partner, something that like it offended you, it hurt you, an organization, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're still bleeding, anything that you are talking about, that's oversharing.
Yeah.
And so, but when you're done bleeding is when you can talk about that scar. But the issue is that we are in a society that it's like behind the scenes you're bleeding.
Yeah.
But like people are like, showcase it.
Right. Flip
Like,
this for attention.
Flip this for attention.
Yeah.
And I always want to be sure that like on this podcast, anything that we personally go through, I'm like, man, did I overshare? I have to like legit ask myself,
think about
like,
that.
like I'm like, okay, did I overshare?
Yeah.
And then if I'm like, actually, I feel healed about this.
Totally.
Now there's been times where I have overshared and I was still bleeding.
I've done that. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where people was like, yikes, that was not a good look. I actually did that at a, oh man. Yeah. I don't know why. I was in a weird mood. And Arvin, you may remember this. So we did a Victory Downtown campus.
Oh yeah.
Right? We did a Victory Downtown campus and we were meeting in this like art bar to where like during the day it was something else and then we would tear down and set it up and it was like, it was a cool space or whatever. Right. So we were doing a series on Victory's Confession. Now it's kind of cool because our podcast is about the Victory's Confession.
Yeah.
We say all the things. We say, I'm here on purpose because I have a purpose. My heart is open. My mind is ready to receive because God is not finished with me yet. My best days are right in front of me. I have victory in my life because Jesus lives in me. Yeah. So we broke down that confession and we were doing a series based on stanzas of that confession and where it lines up with the word of God and then how we can apply it in our everyday life. Well, the part that I got was my best days are right in front of me.
Yeah.
So I got that. And it was in one of the most devastating moments of my life, but it was like, and my brother Paul was like, hey, is this going to, like, tonight you're up to preach.
Yeah.
And I was in a bad space.
Oh man.
And he was like, are you wanting to speak on this? And in my mind, I'm like, it's hilarious that I am having to speak about my best days are right in front of me in the worst part, in the worst thing I've ever been through.
Right.
And it was like very fresh. I was bleeding.
Interesting.
And so I thought, no, I'm going to make it really cool and creative. So guys, what I'm getting ready to say is very cringy, but I'm done bleeding. So anyways, so I go, okay, we're going to do this thing called my best days cafe. And so everyone at the beginning of the sermon is going to get a menu and we're going to do a progressive dinner where this is bonkers. Guys, what I'm getting ready to say is insano, but it happened.
Yeah.
And anyone who was at that downtown service was like, yeah, that happened. So after worship, I get up and I'm like, welcome to my best days cafe. And we handed out menus and in the menu were the sermon points.
Yes.
And then we brought out an appetizer and then we brought out tacos and then we brought out a dessert. Yeah. And I basically broke up the sermon in 3 points, an appetizer, the main course and a dessert and all those types of things.
Yeah.
But within it was like, but what happens if you get something that you didn't order?
Right.
And that was my thing of like, what happens when you're at the Best Days Cafe and you're like, my best days are in front of me. Yeah. But this is not what I ordered. Yeah. How, like, are you still going to eat it? Type of a thing. Wow. I was trying to line it up. I think I was reaching, like I was like reaching, like I have to make a sermon point. Yeah. And then literally I just started crying. Wow. On stage. I started crying in front of everyone. Oh, wow. And I was like, sometimes you don't get what you ordered in life. Yeah, yeah. And everyone was like, oh, wow. Literally eating cookies and looking. People were eating cookies and did not know what to do. And I was like, we're going to call the keys up.
Oh, my goodness.
And people came to the altar call with their cookies. It was such a weird, bizarre. But in my mind, I thought, I need to preach this for me. Yeah. And I think if I'm to be completely honest, I'm like, it would be very easy for me to be like, I actually need someone else to speak tonight. Yeah. And I want to sit and receive. Sure. But I think because I was like wanting to prove something or whatever. Yeah. But I was like, that probably wasn't the right timing. Sure. You know what I mean?
Still bleeding. Yeah.
And, there are certain times that you have to just do a self-checkup. Now, that was a cringy moment, but I'm like, it was, looking back in hindsight, I'm like, I can laugh because I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that was funny because I was reaching and I was doing something that I'm like, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But I did
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
it is what it is, and I
Yeah.
can't change it. But one thing that Arvin said last week was like, okay, within your Facebook posts, these are for the people who are on Facebook.
Sure.
Or within your Insta stories, to where you're like, I really need to vent right now.
Right.
If you're bleeding,
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, if we talk about it literally to make the point clear, if you have an open wound, it's very important that you stop the bleeding and then that you clean the wound. Because if you get bacteria and stuff in there, if it's open to too many people, what I'm basically saying is like, whether it's a good example of like, hey, my life is awesome, or it's a bad example and my life is so terrible, look at this trauma that I've experienced. When your perspective is like, I want to showcase that for attention, that's going to create a really bad structure, because even your happy moments are empty, and then your traumatic moments, I mean, if you look at the news cycle, that's what gets the most attention. So over
the
time,
news cycle gets the most
yeah. So even and I'm not opposed to this group of people, but when a celebrity starts to talk nowadays, their PR trains them like, maybe talk about what's hard in your life. And it's like,
wow,
people that are like, you know what I mean? They're like, you don't understand. Like, I know I have a lot of money and I'm famous. And, you know, there was a whole thing where when the pandemic started, everyone was at their houses, and Ellen DeGeneres, in one of her like 12, nothing against Ellen, one of her 12 mansions, was sitting there, and she's like, I'm just going crazy in this 45,000 square foot house. I just don't know. Like, you know what I mean? And everyone was like, huh? Like,
yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. A little out of touch.
Yeah. So when you, in a spiritual context, in a church context, it's often been the case that because we so adequately share testimonies, like, look, this person had cancer, they got healed. Look at this person, this happened to them, whatever. There is a misunderstanding and misinterpretation of that process, where it's like, I'm going to find the thing about me that is like really bad, and then I'm going to figure out how to finesse that, navigate that, tell that, that's going to be my story, and that's going to be and the problem is, if that becomes your identity, then you're just like, you're interpreting your life as it happens. How can I you become a producer for yourself, and you're like, how can I, like, it's the essential, the Kardashians did this with a TV show and they got paid for it, but you're doing it on social media for free. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? I'm saying you collectively, like, we as a society have gotten to this point. So yeah, I just think it's harmful.
Yeah. And those of you who are like, but wait a second, does that mean I can't share my testimony? No, that's not what we are saying. We want you to. There's power. You overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of your testimony.
Absolutely.
So your testimony is very important.
Right.
But you have to make sure that you're done bleeding.
Exactly.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're talking about it and you're like, oh, okay, I'm still bleeding in this area.
Yeah.
That is what we are sharing.
Yeah.
So it's about the timing and being like, okay,
yeah,
God, is this the right timing? And here's the great thing. The cool thing is that God is so great that he's not limited to your, like, if you do this.
Sure.
Like, he's like, you know what? I'm still going to use it.
Right. Absolutely.
And God, so that's the great thing about God, is that if you miss it, God doesn't.
100%. Absolutely.
So all we're saying is just being careful on the timing.
Yeah.
And if you mess up on the timing, God can still use it, but it's just not the ideal situation.
Sure.
And then when it comes to those things that you're like, you know, someday I'm wanting to write a book, and you actually need an activation. You need a fire lit underneath you.
Yeah.
So that, you know, some of us, you know, we actually, I know another thing on timing is also taking action. Yeah. Because you're only known, like, if a tree, you know, like there is a season for sowing, there's a season for reaping. Yeah. But they are never done in the same season. There's a season for sowing, there's a season for reaping, they're never done in the same season. Yeah. So I say all that. I know that I basically just I'm saying a launch pad before I'm showing you the rocket. But basically, so knowing that, being like, okay, is this season sowing or is this reaping? Like, what do I need to take action in? Yeah. So, and as far as when it comes to writing a book or a script or producing a song, or maybe you're like, someday I want to preach, or I'm ready to launch this church, or whatever it is, there is the timing of being like, okay, do I need more time to build structure? And then there's the flip side of some of us, it's much more romantic and exciting, and it makes us feel good about ourselves to have the idea and consistently like dance with the idea.
Right.
As opposed to just, you know what, I'm going to pull the trigger. Yeah. And if everything's not ready, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So what's unique is I just came back from this lead servant retreat. So here at Victory, we have these things called lead servants. There are people who are over the departments. And on this lead servant, we did this test.
Yeah.
And this test basically shows your strengths. It's the Strength Finders test, right?
Yeah.
And what is unique is that I would love the great thing about the Strength Finders is it's like, these are your strengths in a healthy way, and these are your strengths in an unhealthy way. So basically, it's a weakness finders test.
Interesting.
Also,
Yeah.
which some of us need.
Yeah.
We need some weakness finders to be like, okay, all right, I see you, I see you struggling, and that is in me.
Yeah.
But within these Strength Finders, one of Pastor Paul, our pastor at Victory, one of his things is activator.
Nice.
Now, an activator this is a strength that he has, and I actually found out within my top 5, it's number 3 for me is activator.
I bet.
And an activator is like fire, ready, aim.
Yeah.
To where it's like, why are we waiting on things? So if I'm in a meeting and someone goes, hey, let's do this and this and this, I'm on my phone emailing and texting that person ASAP.
Right.
Because I'm like, let's do it today.
Yeah.
Because I don't like dragging my feet to where I'm like, okay, if someone's like, you know what, I would like to write a book. I open up my laptop and I open up Word document and I go, all right, your first sentence is, and they go, whoa, wait, hold on. And I'm like, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, I want to get things to, and I'm like, no, it'll never happen.
Right.
So in my mind, my biggest fear is like, you only know a tree by its fruit. Going back to the sowing and reaping.
Yeah.
Is that, there's a scripture in the Bible that says you will know a tree by its fruit.
Yeah.
And so if you're not producing fruit, then you're like that fig tree that Jesus approaches in the Gospels.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, you looked great from afar.
Sure.
It looked like you were in season, but you ain't producing nothing.
Right, exactly.
Which means basically some of us, again, another story, the story of the talents. Hey, I gave you these talents and I came back and you didn't do anything with them.
Right.
Like you didn't multiply it.
Yeah.
And so it's going back of like, what is the timing of taking action on certain things?
Right. Absolutely.
And so, I guess the question is, and I want to ask you, Arvin, because I feel like you may have a better thing is like, when do I know?
Yeah.
When do I know of like, when do I pull the trigger?
Sure.
On this dream, on this whatever.
Yeah.
And when is it time to like, okay, be patient with this process. That's my 10-year plan. This is my 3-year plan. This is my 1 year.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously depending on, is this like a career thing? Is this an emotional thing? Is this a testimony thing? Because we've covered so much ground with all of it.
I know.
But obviously it's the wisdom of God in each area. But I think,
okay, let's say it's for let's say just for our purpose, let's say it's either a script, a book, a song, like a sermon.
Yeah. I would say most likely you won't even be the one to fire the trigger. It will be God who does it. So in the meantime, you perfect it internally. Chew on it, think on it, approach it from every other angle. When I was younger and I would be allowed to preach places, I would preach a scripture like super out of context. And my dad would be like, great job, great energy, that was good. That's not, like talking about being like the people of the Tower of Babel because of unity and
he's like,
probably not.
That ain't it.
That's probably not how you want to. Like, but you don't understand. God said they could do anything, and he's like, yeah, but
But
All
that's
right,
not
we'll
what
talk
the
about
Bible means.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
that's
what
so
it's
funny.
So I've learned that whether it is, I mean, even in this role I get to have with you, I was not interested in pulling the trigger, so to speak. It was more so like, I'm gonna pay attention to the soil I have right now. What does this needs to happen to this? Do I need to till this soil? Do I need to work on it? Do I need to plant seed? Do I need to water it? What do I need to do? Sometimes it's as easy as like, just let the sunlight hit it. Like, stay out of the way.
That's true.
Just let that happen and just pause.
Okay.
And then, so here's the thing that
That's
it
good.
lands on. If you need the fruit right now, you have to ask yourself, why do I want this so bad right now? Why do I feel like God's like, hey, your wheat is ready. You could go make some bread. And it's like, nope, I want this tree to make the fruit that it's supposed to make right now. I want my career and my marriage to look like this right now. And God's like, right, but we've got opportunities for character over here. We've got opportunities for self-reflection, self-awareness over here. And it's like, I don't want that. I want that. Well, you're not going to have a balanced diet in your life.
So what you are saying is the answer is looking at the soil that you're currently standing on.
100%.
So as opposed to being like within, I know we jump all around. So what I'm getting ready to say, you're going to go, huh?
I love it.
But like with farmers, there's this thing called crop rotation to where if you were to plant tomatoes in the same part of this farming, is that the tomatoes actually sap certain nutrients out of the soil.
Yeah.
Specific ones. Same with carrots and corn and certain. So if you were to grow tomatoes on that same part of that field 2 or 3 seasons in a row, it would kill the soil.
Right.
So crop rotation is where I did corn last year and tomatoes last year. I'm actually going to flip because they take certain things out of the soil.
Right.
So looking at your crop rotation of being like, okay, I'm in this soil in this season and it's going to take certain nutrients out of me.
Totally.
And then in the next season, I'm going to work that soil.
Yeah.
But just knowing that like, does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
So it's like right now you are like, I'm ready to launch a business, you know, and you're like, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur and launch this business. And then I would ask, well, the current soil is that have you yet to work in a business? Do you understand HR? Do you understand showing up on time?
Yikes.
Do you understand giving people dental and medical plans?
Wow.
Do you understand what it means to meet a customer's needs, customer service and training and all that type of stuff? Do you understand a business structure?
Sure.
Or do you just have a lot of incredible knowledge from some YouTubes, from a life coach, or from a college professor that really amps you up? And Dead Poet Society is like, you can do anything, which is great. I love all of that stuff. That's the stuff I eat it up. Yeah. But it's like, okay, you want to make a movie. All right, your current soil is you're doing a social media Insta video. Do you know how to edit and color a Insta video? Okay, well, let's lean into that first before getting into film.
Excellent, yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
like that's the soil that you're at now.
Right.
Because now you get to learn healthy habits, you get to learn structure, and you get to learn those things.
Yeah.
So looking at the soil that you're at now as far as timing of, well, I want that fruit.
Yeah.
I want the fruit of accepting my Oscar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So, you know, for me, like, or I want the fruit of finally building that facility. Like I've always wanted to build a 3-story fitness center.
Nice.
You know, with a basement with like wrestling and all that, like a wrestling mat and all these types of things for high school, collegiate, you know, this athletic facility. Okay. Well, right now, have you learned, you know, have you been involved in building meetings of other buildings? Do you understand zoning?
Right.
Do you understand what it means that like if you build this square footage of a facility that you actually that you are required by the city to build a parking lot, which means that's extra cost.
Totally. Yeah.
Do you understand the price of steel?
Right.
It's all of those things where you're like, oh,
yeah.
Okay, so I actually can do something today while looking at the soil that I'm standing on that it can position me for when that sun does come, that I'm like, oh, I'm receiving the sun now.
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Absolutely. It basically is saying God's timing is an extension of his wisdom. God's wisdom doesn't contradict
God's
his
timing is an extension of his wisdom.
Yeah. So
Very
his
bueno.
timing is perfect. And so he doesn't give you ideas and then go, I don't know, just do it whenever you want. Like, he'll, you know what I mean? I think it even honors God when God gives you a dream to be like, okay, when and how do you want this to be activated?
Ooh, that's
And
so
God goes,
good.
wow, thanks for asking. Okay.
Thanks for
But I think a
asking.
lot of people, as soon as they get a hint of God's plan for their life, they go, okay, now. I mean, I made this mistake. There was a dude who took me to coffee at the last semester of my senior year in college, just to let you know the progress I've made since then. I was sitting there in this coffee place with this guy, and he's like, hey, I've read some of your stuff, this and that. Would you like to come work
Because
for
you were
me?
writing at
Yeah,
the
I was
time,
just
and
putting
you had written-
blogs up and trying to be a thought leader.
A thought leader?
A thought leader. I can't say that laughing. I
Yeah.
wanted to be that, and I had written a manuscript for a book, and this is so funny to share now. Obviously I'm
But
not
you're done
bleeding.
bleeding.
I'm not bleeding from this anymore.
Okay.
I bled for
Show
a
us
while
your
after.
scars.
This is the dagger. This guy goes, do you want to come work for us and write for us, and then we can talk about your book and work on it? And I go, honestly, I wrote this book, so I think I'm just going to live off of that. I turned down 2 jobs out of college. I know, it's insane to me now.
You
There were
said, I'm
two-
basically, I'm going to live off the royalties
Basically,
of the book that
this
I've
book,
written at 23.
He's like, this is like February, and I'm like, I graduate in May. The book has not been like published. Nothing has been in the works. Nothing. I just have a Word document on my laptop with words. This is just the mistake, and I laugh at it now, but there are a lot of people who, when I see them in college or in Bible school, I'm like, hey, this is great. Your dreams are valid. God did give them to you. But I want to see you on the other side of the chasm of the first year out of school when what you ordered didn't show up. And when your secret
Full
deadline
circle.
was not met. Like, I thought I was the exception, which everyone tends to think that. After I finished school, right after, God's going to do everything, and then I'm going to be in this
God's gonna do
position. And then it's
everything.
like, I assure you, if you had the wisdom of what you'll have in 10 years, in 3 years, you'll look back and thank God, because I'm certain I would have ruined my life if all
And-
that stuff
and
happened
you know
at that
what's,
time.
You know what's unfortunate is that, first off, I want to tell. Hold on. Remind me of what you were saying.
Sure.
But one thought: your dreams were not meant to frustrate you. Your dreams were meant to fulfill you.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that again. Your dreams were not meant to frustrate you. They were meant to fulfill you. It's just certain dreams take a while. Joseph's dream in the Bible,
Right.
like, there's so many Bible stories
Right.
that if, Moses 80 years in the wilderness,
Yeah.
Jesus 30 years until he stepped into ministry.
Yeah.
Like, if you're waiting, guess what? You're in good company.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the other thing is that sometimes there were certain theologies of certain people that grew up in churches that were like, hey, you do these things, God is going to show up for you.
Right.
And so whenever I've talked to my friends that are like, honestly, I stopped believing in God, and I'm like, oh, because life hit you? But no, I mean, it was a very unfortunate thing where they were raised up and it was and I believe in prosperity.
Of course.
I totally believe
But
in it. I
holistic
love it.
prosperity.
Holistic
Absolutely.
prosperity.
Absolutely.
But sometimes it was like, the Lord is going to bless you.
Sure.
When you do X, Y, and Z, or
Right.
at this point in your life.
Right,
So
right.
name it and claim it. And here's the thing. I believe in the power of your words.
Absolutely.
I hold my kids accountable to that.
100%, yeah.
But sometimes we interpret it different to where it's
Yeah.
like, if I say in the morning, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm a billionaire and I'm working with other billionaires and I'm the CEO company of da 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 da, and I
Yeah.
just walked out on the balcony of my skyscraper in Dubai. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like we
Absolutely.
say those things,
Right.
and then a year and nothing has happened.
Yeah.
Hope deferred makes the heart sick.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. And you're like, so does God not want me to have a skyscraper in Dubai? I don't know. I can't answer that
should
for
ask
you.
him. Yeah.
You should ask him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
That makes it simple. But I think that sometimes it can even impact the way that we view God.
Yeah.
And then it actually ends up hurting our life.
Absolutely.
When it's like, God was like, I never said those things.
Uh-huh.
So anyways, what would be your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
basically what you shared is similar to this as well, that the God's wisdom and his timing work hand in hand. So a person who comes to God saying like, I want what you want for my life. That includes your wisdom and your calling and your anointing for what I'm supposed to do, who I'm supposed to marry, et cetera, and I want your timing with all of it. That demonstrates the fear of God, saying like, I really want.
So wait a second. The fear of God is not being like afraid of him.
No, it's an appetite for his will. It's like
An appetite for his will. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely. It's like, look, anything you give me,
That's
good,
so
bad,
good.
ugly, and there's been a lot of all three. Anything you give me, good, bad, or ugly, I am going to ask you what you want me to do with it. Whether that's someone harming me, and I go, how do you want me to handle this? I know how I want to handle this.
Yeah.
How do you want me to handle it? And there's the moments where those are the scars that come out. And God's saying like, I will heal you. I will take care of you. Okay, there's a good thing. I have the chance, God, to work on an Easter production in 2022 with Pastor John at Victory. How do you want me to handle it? Do I come in going, I'm going to use this to garner attention for myself? Or are we going to sit down and go, let's make the best story possible that pleases the Holy Spirit? If you do the latter, then it's always been a good show.
Yeah.
Every time I've tried the former, which thankfully God didn't let me do while I'm at Victory, I tried it before I worked here. It crashed and burned, and it was devastating.
Yeah. Or there's been times where it has happened, and then I have fallen apart.
Right. Yeah, you like, then
Like,
it's
I'm like-
existential. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yeah, I think that's so good. Having an appetite for the will of God. I love that
Absolutely.
you said that.
Yeah.
So just to reflect on behind the scenes of our best days,
Yeah.
this episode was all about timing.
Right.
On the timing of your dreams was basically your dreams were not meant to frustrate you, but to fulfill you, and not to confuse like the right thing at the wrong time is a bad thing.
Right.
So don't confuse your 3-year plan with your 10-year plan.
Absolutely.
Being patient, waiting on God's timing and the structure that he's building within you. Everyone who's listening and watching, know that.
Yeah.
If you just saw, and I'm grateful that he only gives us glimpses.
Yeah.
But if you saw in full detail what God had in store for you,
Yeah.
you would not question the current process and the timing that you're in,
Wow.
because you would go,
Wow.
oh my God,
Yeah.
yes, thank you for building the structure.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you were like, let's say to have like a mirror on the wall, show me in detail
Yeah.
what God has in store for me,
Yeah.
it would probably terrify you and it would stress you out.
100%.
But what God is doing right now is he's building the structure to hold those things.
wow.
And then we talked about the timing of sharing your testimony. And Arvin, he said, when you're done bleeding, you can talk about a scar.
Yeah.
You know, we look at Jesus and doubting Thomas.
Oh yeah. That was something Tim Ross shared when I was at ORU
Tim Ross,
years ago.
incredible speaker.
Incredible pastor, leader. He was talking about how he chooses when and where to share what's happened to him in his life. And he talked about how there was a time when Jesus showed his disciples the holes in his hands. And then there was a specific time when he showed Thomas the wound on his side. He kept those wounds. After he'd been resurrected, he intentionally kept the scars so that it could be a testimony of what he had done for humanity. But he was talking, the thing he was highlighting, the thing that we've been talking about this whole episode, and I know we're finishing up here, but the whole thing he was saying was seeking God's wisdom on when and how to share those real scars. I've learned that personally. I know people have, and when I see someone who hasn't learned that, I go, wow, that's
Tough.
obvious. Yeah, it's something to learn, honestly. It's not like your life is over when that happens, but it's like there will be a day and time where your scars will, people who are bleeding will see your scars and go, okay, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, wow. And God can use what you've been through, obviously, to minister people. But right now, inner healing is greater than outer success.
Right.
Inner healing is greater than outer success. So even though you're like, oh, but I know this would be great in a book and it would be great for a blog and people would just chill.
Yeah.
Inner healing is greater than outer success.
Yeah.
All of those things are going to come that you need, but God is doing a great work in you.
Yeah.
Hey, we wanted to say we love your. Thank you for Thank you for listening.
Thanks for tuning in.
And tuning in to season 3 of Behind the Scenes
Of our best days.
Much love.
See ya.